The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 153 with Coach Jerry Haas from Wake Forest.
See the magazine, swing like Ernie Els. Well, 99% of us can't get in that position.
Right.
So, because we're not flexible enough.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm Jeff Pellizzero, your host, and this week we have a fantastic guest. We have Coach Jerry Haas, the head coach for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, has been the head coach there for now 21 seasons, and obviously you probably recognize the last name of Haas. He is the uncle of FedEx champion Bill Haas and brother of Jay Haas, both two incredible PGA players. Jerry also played on the PGA Tour, played on the what is now the Web.com Tour. Back in the day was the Nationwide or Nike Tour, as well as the European Tour. So Jerry obviously is quite a player himself and has been in the Wake Forest golf family. Well, went to Wake Forest, played there, but also has been there, teaching and leading these guys over the past 21 years. So in this episode, we get a chance to kind of go behind the scenes of what it's like to first just get to know the culture of Wake Forest, guys like Webb Simpson, obviously Bill Haas, and what brought the Haas family to Wake Forest in the first place. And then we just talk about, being a coach and what are the responsibilities of a Division I coach at a program like a Wake Forest, as far as recruiting goes, and how do you pick and how do you look at the kids that are coming up? They're coming up so young now and committing so early. So we talk about some of those things. He tells some great stories about, some of the guys that he worked with, including Webb, and some issues that he may have had going to class or not going to class. I feel like I could have just sat and listened to stories for another 2 or 3 hours from Coach Haas, because he just seems like one of those guys that can tell a great story, has a bunch of them, has had so many great experiences with a lot of neat people, and so I'm sure you're going to enjoy this episode. Real quick, let's just say a quick thanks to our sponsor for this week's episode, which is the PGA Tour mobile app. Again, it's the app that I use every single weekend in order to keep track of what's going on the tour, who's winning, what the leaderboard looks like, and also just to get a feel for what each guy is doing. They've really streamlined this app to make it so user-friendly, so you can go in, you can check highlights, you can see shot by shot, you can see where each guy hit each particular shot that he had and the layout of the course. So it's such a great tool to be able to keep up while you're on the go and not able to sit in front of the TV and watch what's going on the tour. So you can follow the web.com, you can follow PGA Tour, the Mackenzie Tour, all the different tours affiliated with the PGA. So again, it's a great resource. Go to whatever app store you use, whether you have an iPhone or a BlackBerry or an Android, whatever it is, you'll be able to find it and you'll be up and running in no time. All right, let's get into this interview with Coach Haas. Coach Jerry Haas, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
It's nice to be here. Thank you, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I appreciate you squeezing me in. I know you got a very busy schedule today, a lot of things going on, and just wanted to kind of catch up and talk about, everything, Wake Forest, Haas family golf, and all that stuff. But before we get into any of that, let's talk. You grew up kind of across the river from me. I'm in St. Louis. You grew up in Belleville, Illinois, right?
I did, yeah. It was a 5-game winning streak last night. I've watched Yachty's Grand Slam about 5 times already this morning on my phone and on TV. So big Cardinals fan, love the Midwest, and been down in North Carolina here at Wake Forest for 20 years. Hard to believe, but I certainly haven't forgotten where I come from. I love the Blues, love the Cardinals.
Awesome. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about, obviously you've been at Wake Forest forever. Your family has a huge history at Wake Forest. What was it about Wake Forest that kind of started that whole tradition of so many people in your family and golfers going there?
Well, I credit my uncle Bob Golby, the Masters champion in 1968. He won 11 tour events and was a really, really great player. And he knew Coach Haddock. Jesse Haddock was the coach at Wake Forest. And he told Coach Haddock at the Greensboro Open over at Starmount Country Club, he told Coach Haddock, my nephew is a really good player. And Coach Haddock tells the story that, he said, everybody's nephew's a really good player. And then Coach Haddock looked into it a little bit and decided, you know what? This Jay Haas is pretty good. So he came and watched him, and that's how my brother Jay ended up at Wake Forest. And then the next year, Curtis Strange came in. and they built themselves a really, really nice dynasty there and won 2 national championships. So being a little brother 10 years younger, I always dreamed about playing golf at Wake Forest, and lucky for me, I was taught very well. I look back, and my uncle spent a lot of time with me because my brother Jay, being 10 years older, was already on the tour when I was 13, 14 years old. So I spent a lot of time with my uncle, and he taught me this great game. I got to play with him a lot. He was working for NBC Sports in there as well, and so he always had something good to say and something positive, and he would give you something to work on, and then he'd leave town for 2 or 3 weeks, and you'd work on it, and then he'd come back. You'd be so proud to show him, like, how's that? No, that ain't it. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I just worked on it for 3 weeks, and now let me show you again. And he kept in there. So he was really, really a wonderful teacher. Didn't overteach, which I think is really important. I think you see that a little bit today. You get too many videos and too many angles and too many this and that. And, at the end of the day, you've got to create the motion. And if you're pretty consistent with it and know what the ball does every time, you can be a pretty good player. And one of my favorite quotes ever is Freddie Couples. They asked him why he's playing so well. He said, because I'm hitting it where I'm looking, which is really, at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. If you're picturing a draw and you can hit a draw, it's not too hard a game. If you can picture a cut or whatever shot you're needing to hit, if you can picture it and pull it off, the game becomes pretty easy.
I would imagine that's something that you bring to the coaching aspect and bring to your players. How did your transition then go from playing at Wake Forest, then I know you played on the tour, and then transitioning into coaching at Wake Forest? How did that whole story happen?
Well, I was playing, and I played about 12 years, and I played in Europe and played okay, and I was on the big tour off and on through the 90s, and my daughter Shannon was born, and she was about 1 year old, and I wasn't playing great, so I decided I wanted to maybe get into something else, but I love golf, and I heard that Jack Lewis, the current coach at that time of Wake Forest University, was maybe going to leave, so I kind of put my hat in the ring, and luckily I think there were 6 candidates. I was a college grad, which I think 3 of us were, so that helped a little bit, and I ended up getting the position, lucky for me, and I've cherished it. I relished it. I wake up every day very thankful for what I do. I get to work with some really, really talented players, and somebody that understands the game, understands what you're talking about, and we've got a really good team at the current time. Don't lose anybody off a team that was the highest ranked in the ACC last year, so we're really looking forward to this year, and players got a lot to prove. Obviously, you get them sometimes, and you don't see their best golf. It's sometimes at 25 or 28 or 30, but you can see that it's coming, and you hopefully mold them in the right way while they're here, and graduate them, make sure they go to class, and do all that. Wake is a very, very powerful university and a great place to go to school. You learn a lot here, just besides golf, just about accountability. There's a lot of accountability in what you got to do, and I think there's a lot of accountability in life, so it equates very nicely.
Yeah, everything I've heard about Wake Forest is just, so many great things, great people there, the culture there, not only just the golf culture, but the community and the education. Obviously, I was fortunate, a good friend and client of mine played for you, Justin Bryant, and he's told me so many great things about just his time there and what he's learned there, and from people like you. What is it? I want to kind of dig into the distinction of being a college golf coach, and how does that differ from being someone's swing instructor? Because I would assume all of these guys coming in now have their swing instructors. What is the role of you as the coach, and how do you take these guys under your wing and take them from point A to point B, or wherever you want to see them when they graduate?
Oh, well, that's a great point, because, yes, they do all have their instructors, and Coach Dan Walters and myself, we really pay attention to that, and we have a good communication with the instructor, and everybody has a tendency or something that they fall back on or something that they've worked on with their teacher. So we're just another good pair of eyes that can help them and guide them. And we play with them a lot. We watch them play. We watch them play in tournaments. We watch them qualify. We watch them play enough that after a while you say, okay, Jeff, you drive it great. Your bunker game's good. But every time you've been outside of 40 feet, you 3-putt about half the time. So then we try to tailor each guy's practice to what he needs to get better at. We always hit wedges to start the day, and they have to go through a wedge routine and a little bit of a putting routine. But then when they break off into what they want to work on or what they need to work on, then Jeff goes over and he has to do some certain drills for lag putting to hopefully improve that area. Because, I've looked at 1,000 swings, and every instructor has looked at it, and no two guys swing alike at the top. I mean, you can break it down on the tour today. You think they all, but they none of them look the same at the top. They do a pretty nice job at getting it back down to impact, and there are some things I guess you could work on to get it there. But at that age, you've got to try to work with the instructor, and you've got to realize that each kid is a little different. Some of them you can get mad at, and some you can't. So that's the balance of what a coach does, and you build a wonderful relationship with your players, and not only through golf, but just watching them grow and watching them get better. And I think all they want is honest feedback. And I've said that many times. If you play for me and I'll just stand over there and say, "Oh man, you're doing fantastic," when I know there's an area you need to get better, I address that area. And quite frankly, if you take that as criticism or he's picking on me or whatever, well, you're probably not going to be very good anyway. But if you say, you know what, this guy I think knows what he's talking about, if I can get better in that area. And then the bad thing about it is, though, Jeff, is that you don't see immediate results. Sometimes it takes 6 months, a year, and we've noticed through the 20 years of coaching that sometimes it's between your freshman and sophomore summer where they come back and they're so much better, or their sophomore and junior year. You can just see how they're starting to get it, starting to understand how they can play. And there's a lot of really good players in college. I mean, some of them you probably haven't heard of much that are going to be pretty good pros, and some of them have already kind of figured that out, how to play and how to mentally get through the round, how to physically get through the round, and depending on how they're playing. So it's a lot of adjustments, and it's a very tough sport to recruit, because I've equated it to football. If you're 6'5" and 250 and you're going to be my new tight end, and you come to campus and all of a sudden you can't catch, well, I'm going to make you an outside linebacker, or I'm going to make you a special teams guy, or I'm going to do something with you. But now you got a golfer that all of a sudden can't chip, or he can't putt, or he's got issues, or, he's got the heebie-jeebies or whatever it is. Well, now you got to kind of work through that, or try to figure out how to get that guy through that moment. And, he might not get it till after school, and now the 4 years are done. But you work your best, and you try your best, and you give them like honest evaluation. And then, I mean, golf is very intrinsic. You have to take it from there.
How has your coaching style changed over the 21 years that you've been there, and how has the game even changed? Obviously players are different these days than they were before. Let's take a second here to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Super Speed Golf. It's the overspeed training system that everyone is using. I think there are in the hundreds of tour players that are using this system now. I know the PGA, LPGA, Web.com, European tour players are all using this club system. It's a three different clubs, 3 different weights of clubs, and it's an overspeed training device in order to help increase your swing speed, but also create more balance and better tempo in your swing. And we've seen the likes of Billy Horschel and Phil Mickelson and tons of other tour players that are implementing these on even in their warm-up session. We saw Phil on the range at the Open Championship using them. But it's a great device to not only teach your body, but teach your brain that you can move faster. And I've seen increases in speed of over 10 miles an hour in very short periods of time with a driver. So if you haven't checked out the overspeed training device, the Super Speed Golf Clubs, go to superspeedgolf.com and be sure to use the code 18STRONG. All right, let's get back to Coach Haas.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. There's a lot of parental involvement, which I don't think you had as much back when I first started. You could get on a kid a little bit, or you could this or that. And one of my favorite stories to tell is about Webb Simpson, U.S. Open champion, played for me. And he went home. He called me one morning, or I called him at like 9:15, and I could hear his car running. I'm like, hey, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm heading home to Raleigh, and I'm going to have lunch with my dad. And, I got to go to the dry cleaners. I want to get a haircut, and, I want to practice a little bit. And I'm like, Webb, you got to go to class. And I said, you miss enough as it is. And he's like, well, I just have a lot to do and whatever. I'm like, Webb, but you don't understand. You miss enough. You've got to go. So I don't know what possessed me, but when I hung up, I called his dad. And I told Sam, I'm like, Sam, look, here's the deal. And that phone conversation with Sam Simpson lasted about 20 seconds. And he said, Jerry, it'll be taken care of. So I thought that was wonderful parenting by Sam. And Webb came in my office Monday and said, I understand where you're coming from. But I apologize. It'll never happen again. And it never happened again. And Sam Simpson never gave me excuses. Oh, well, he's been working so hard, or, oh, he's this or that. Because I explained to Webb, you could still do all that you wanted to do. You just go to your couple classes, and you could still be home by 1 o'clock. But anyway, but that's just, and nowadays, maybe that doesn't quite happen. Maybe there's a lot of excuses. But perhaps that's why Sam Simpson has a U.S. Open champion as a son.
Right. Does that ever factor into your recruiting too? I mean, when you're looking at players, obviously there's tons and tons of skilled players, but do you kind of look into the background of them, their attitude, their family life, that kind of stuff? Does that ever come on the table?
Always, yes. You look at everything. You look at their. I always say I want to have character, not characters.
Yeah.
So it does, but I'll tell you this: doing it. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 kids in the class and you think, well, I'll just throw that kid in there. The other 2 are way better. And then at the end of the day, the kid you throw in there is better than the other 2. Or you think that, man, this kid is so tough. And then you get him on campus and you actually find out that he's really soft. So it's hard to read because the recruiting happens so much in advance. And it's you really got to do your homework early, and you got to almost project that, man, this kid's going to be a really good player, and then you hope that he stays at it, that he doesn't lose interest, or he doesn't take it for granted, or if he stays out of trouble. So it's a tough deal. It's gotten so early that it really makes it difficult, because if you pass on a really good kid, you're like, God, we could have had that kid, whereas there's other kids that play basketball and football and baseball and golf. They play a lot of sports, which I personally like that, but they need time. They can't all of a sudden at 15 or 16 be as good a golfer as they need to be or whatever sport they play. So saw a great interview the other day with Christian McCaffrey, the running back, just came out as a rookie, and he said he played baseball for hand-eye, he played basketball for jumping and explosiveness, and he ran track for straightaway speed, but he said he always knew he wanted to be a football player. But he felt like the other sports really helped him become a good football player. And I truly believe that I don't personally like the guy that's all I do. I've been playing since 5 years old, and that's all I do is play golf. I kind of like the other guy. I think they're more competitive. I think they're better team guys. But everybody's different. Everybody has their... And you really don't know what you're getting until you get them there, and then you realize, hey, this guy's pretty good. So.
Sure. How young are you looking at guys? Like, when do they kind of come onto your radar?
Oh, early. 12, 13 years old probably, and then you hear about them, and then they're hyped up, and then they want to come take a look, and they're really anxious to make their decision early, and you want to kind of say, all right, let's just slow down here a little bit, but you realize that there's other schools out there that'll take them tomorrow. So it's a tough deal. It's nice when you have the parents and say, look, no, it's way too early. Let's just go through the process here and see what happens. Sure. And that's those parents I like.
When you do have a kid that commits super early, how often is it that they actually follow through on that commitment? Because I've seen in other sports too, a kid that is maybe, 14 years old, 15 years old commits to a school, and then I hear 2 years later that, oh, he's not going there anymore, he's going to XYZ.
Yeah, it doesn't happen much in golf. It's a little different because you're only getting 2 or 3 kids a year. So it's not like a lot of them are switching around. And the coaches are very respectful that, in golf anyway, I feel that, if somebody's going to your university, you don't try to recruit them on the side and, try to do things. And now, there have been parents that reach out and try to, go in the back door, if you will, and try to, see what's out there still, because maybe they're hearing something they don't like about the school or whatever. But, then sometimes if you've got some scruples, you'll call that coach and just say, hey, I want to let you know that so-and-so's dad's been shopping him around. So, it's you got to remember in recruiting, the university or the golf coach, we want something, but also the parents and the kid want something. So everybody's kind of got a little motive here of, what they're trying to get done and what they're willing to pay. And we get 4.5 scholarships, so it's like a big poker game. And sometimes you'll have a kid that you really like, but he needs a full scholarship, and then you got another kid that you like as well and pretty decent player, and he can come for books. You're like, man, I'll take the kid for books, because that way I can save. I feel like the kid for books is just as good. So,
sure. You mentioned
my brother.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, as I said, my brother Jay once told me that I'd rather my kid be on nothing and be the best player than be on a full ride and be your 8th player. And I said, yeah, that's a good point. He was talking about Bill, and Bill was pretty good. Let me just say that.
Yeah, it seems like he's doing okay.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
You mentioned a little bit about the athleticism and guys playing different sports and how you kind of like that. And that's something that I think we've been seeing a lot, especially in the fitness side of golf, talking about, some of these players like a Jordan Spieth or a Dustin Johnson, how they all have these athletic backgrounds. How has that kind of changed, and what role does kind of the fitness or the strength training and that play in just the schedules of your guys and just what you've seen happen in the game these days?
Yeah, it's a huge thing. I'm a big proponent of stretching and staying flexible. That's kind of the hidden key, I think, if you look at it. I mean, you can see the magazine, swing like Ernie Els. Well, 99% of us can't get in that position.
Right.
So, because we're not flexible enough. So we have a guy, David Bass. Coach Bass is awesome. He's our TPI certified guy at Wake, and he works with the golf team, and he's done a tremendous job. He's probably been with us about 5 years, and I've noticed a huge improvement in their strength. We have one of the longest teams, but at the end of the day, I still tell them you got to stretch. You got to take care of your body. You got to, I stretch every morning, every night. I mean, JB, your buddy Justin Bryan will tell you. I mean, but I feel like I'm 53 and I still play okay because I have taken pretty good care of myself. And I just can't tell these kids enough. They're young and, I'm already flexible. I'm like, okay, you are flexible, but let's keep staying flexible. Let's work out. Let's use lighter weights and more repetition so we make the muscle longer, not shorten it. And because I equate it to every 300-pound lineman in the NFL, they hit it about 180 yards, and you got 130-pound kids hitting it about 320 yards. So it really makes no sense. So it's not so much about strength. It's about the fast twitch muscles, and it's about the positioning and hitting it solid. And, look at basketball players. A point guard used to be 5'8" and 5'10", and now they're 6'3". And linemen are bigger, and baseball players are bigger. So you're getting, I always tell this stat, I played the PGA Tour in 1990, was my first year, and there was 7% of the players were 6'1" and taller.
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple years ago, it was 70% of the players were 6'1" or taller. And then you start going down the line, like, oh man, Dustin Johnson's 6'4", and my nephew Bill's 6'2", and Henrik Stenson 6'5", Phil Mickelson 6'2" or 3", and you just go down the line. Man, there's a lot of big guys, and they're going back to what I said. They're athletes, and now they're playing this sport. The balls go a little further. The equipment's better. It's turned into a bit of a bomber's game. You still have to play, but it makes a difference if you can get the ball out there a little bit. And that's why you're seeing more athletes. I mean, Steph Curry, not to change the subject, but shooting 148 last week, that's very impressive.
That was.
There's been a lot of guys that have tried and thought they were really good from other sports, and he never boasted, I'm going to do this or that. He just went out there, and I tell you what, that was really, really good. I was happy for that kid, and he's obviously a tremendous basketball player, to say the least. But to do that, and I saw some of the highlights. He looked fantastic, and I think he maybe opened the doors for some guys that realized that, man, he could step out of his element and do that. And then I guess the reality is he shot 8 over, and I still missed the cut by 13 shots or 12 shots or something like that. So it just shows the appreciation I think that other athletes have for golf, and the fact that it looks so easy, but yet when you try to play it, it's not so easy.
Yeah, I think that whole thing ended up with such a great outcome, with him playing well, kind of exceeding people's expectations, but also showing how hard it is to be out there. Because I think there were only a couple guys that were behind him missing the cut, But it was great to see him perform, but it gave us all a glimpse of how hard it really is to be out there, and that was pretty cool. I think you touched on a big piece earlier as well on, you said you stretch every day and just moving every day and kind of getting that in as part of your routine, because so many of the people listening to this show and so many of the people that I run across that aren't college golfers, the college guys, they should be flexible in those days. But like you said, when we're getting into our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, it's that movement and ability to keep those positions that really makes such a big difference, to be able to play this game without hurting yourself and having fun out there without having those aches and pains.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I get out of the shower and I do stuff with my towel, like mimic golf swings, and you stretch, and then a couple of things you can do, because if you think about it, all your life you've kind of sat over a desk or something, and you kind of lose your flexibility in your shoulders. Swimming's very good. Getting in a pool and doing some exercises in there. I take my 5 and my 6 iron to give it a little more weight. I hold them together and I make just some golf swings every day, right and left-handed, to work both sides of the body. You don't need to do a ton to get better. Everybody thinks, I got to go out and hit 500 balls a day. God, if I just practiced more. Well, not really. You kind of have to be able, like I said, get it in the positions. You kind of have to sometimes lay there or daydream about what your swing should look like. And sometimes just doing that gets you a little bit better. The one thing I would say to the listeners out there is the biggest tendency I see with amateur golfers is they all want to dive into the ball, or they get to the top of their swing and they all want to collapse down and get to the ball. But if you study Rory and some of these other guys, Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, how they work almost upward from the ground up, it's like they're pushing up in a way which makes their longer arms and more of a bigger lever, if you will. So if you're an amateur golfer and you're listening and you're trying, you hit them fat, you hit them thin, you hit them, pop them up, you do all that, it's because you're losing your levels. You're on your way down. You should be staying as tall as you can. And it goes back to my Uncle Bob Goldie. And if I heard tall through the ball once, I heard it a million times when I was a kid. You got to be tall through the ball. And I have a 12-year-old little boy that's playing, and pretty nice little player, and I told him, got to have a good grip. That was from my Uncle Bob as well, and it has to be tall through the ball. So I sound like my uncle, but he's got a really nice golf swing. He's staying tall, and then the more he goes out and plays, and he sees other kids with bad swings, he's like, oh, man, I'm glad that I listened to my dad. So, and I'm glad I listened to my uncle.
Right.
So, try to stay tall. You feel like, I'm gonna top it if I stay tall. No, you won't. You'll figure it out. Your arms will figure out how to get down there, because your arms are connected to the club, which is connected to the club head. So it'll all come together for you.
I love that thought. I'm gonna take that one next time I go out swinging for sure.
Good. Let me know how you do. I'd like to hear.
I will for sure. All right, before we get to our final questions here, I got to ask. You told us a little story about Webb Simpson. You got any good stories about Bill that we can hear?
Well, I would say between Bill and Webb Simpson, they probably hit about 100 golf balls total in their 4 years at Wake. They did not like to practice, but I tell you what, they played every day. And I feel that too many kids or players, they stand on the range. You can fake it in on the range. There's no consequence. You hit a bad shot, you just rake another ball in. But when you play, you have to hit the driver. You hit it in a bunker. You got to hit it out of a fairway bunker. You got to chip. You got to putt. You got to do everything. You got trees. You got water. You got all the elements that really show you where you're at. Now, that being said, if you're going really bad, you maybe need to work on your swing a little bit. But the worst thing I ever like to hear is, oh, I'm working on my swing, I'm making some changes, that's why I'm shooting 85. Well, that's a bunch of bunk, I think. I think if you're going to be making changes, you can still shoot 65. If you're making those kind of changes, then you really don't understand how to play, in my opinion. So you got to play. Bill was great. Bill won 10 times. He was 2-time player of the year. He averaged 68.7 for a college season, and I don't know, but it's going to be hard-pressed for somebody to break that. About 70, he's been winning lately, and there was a guy that averaged 69.4 or something like that. It was pretty close, but that's pretty good golf that he played, and he was a really, really good kid. And he told Billy Harmon one time, Billy Harmon asked him, how's it playing for your uncle? And he's like, I don't know, better than I thought it would be. And so Billy said, you know what, I'm taking that as a compliment. I think that was a good thing that he said.
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
I actually am going to see him. He's playing in the Wyndham Championship next week. I'm going to go take a look at his swing. I hadn't worked with him in a while, and I follow all my Demon Deacons. Kyle Reifers is out there. He played for me. Webb, of course, and Bill. And I watched the Champions Tour. Billy Andrade, my old college roommate, my brother Jay. So Gary Hallberg. I watch them all. I love golf, and especially Wake Forest golfers.
That's awesome. Coach, I've got so many questions I'd love to ask. I know we're running short on time here, but if I could ask you just a couple of the quick wrap-up questions, little rapid-fire questions that we always ask everybody on the show.
Let's do it.
First one, and probably the most important one, is are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
I'm definitely a Caddyshack guy. A little older guy. I've quoted it a million times, and I kind of relate to that growing up in Belleville, Illinois at St. Clair Country Club, and I pictured Danny Noonan trying to win the Caddy Championship, and they got the shadows going and guys yelling at him. I mean, that's just I didn't grow up at this giant country club, but yet I wouldn't trade it for anything. I was just back there the other day doing a little Rob Strano and I, another young man who played professionally, and he works for the Golf Channel now. We did a little 3-day clinic for some kids, and it was really, really well received, kind of a playing camp, and I was back at St. Clair, and they treated us great. So anyway, it's a long-winded answer, but definitely a Caddyshack.
Awesome. I've heard great things about St. Clair Country Club. All right.
It's really nice. Yep.
If you had, if golf was like a baseball game or like a boxing match, and you got to walk to the first tee box with a song playing in the background, what is your song?
I think it'd be Nelly Furtado. And there's the line in her song that says, you either got it or you don't. You either stand or you fall. I don't know if you know that song. It's kind of got a rhythmic drum in the background, kind of. And but that's just pretty much golf right there. Either you can play or you can't. You're either going to stand up here or you're going to fall down. So that's my anthem there, the Nelly Furtado.
Love it. Kind of caught me off guard with Nelly Furtado a little bit.
I like the song. I like the words.
I like it. If you could play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, past, present, future, and you could play anywhere you wanted, who would it be and where would you play?
I would play at Pebble Beach, one of my favorites all time. Beautiful walk. Carmel's unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, I'd play with my Uncle Bob Colby in his prime. When he was winning, when he was playing his best. I caught him maybe as an older man, and I found some video years later he had showed me, and I was like, oh, my God, this guy, he could really play. As he was older, he didn't have quite the speed and the strength or whatever. Was still played very, very well, but he was, in his day, apparently, could really, really go. He won the long drive with a 3-wood at the PGA, I believe, at Baltusrol one year. So he won 11 times, and 10 of them were hitting 3-woods off the tee, kind of a strong 3-wood, because he had trouble driving it at times. So to play with my uncle in his prime would have been who I would play with, and we'd play at Pebble Beach.
That's a great answer. All right, Coach, I really appreciate your time today, and obviously we wish you guys the greatest of luck in the next couple of years, hoping to pull in that national championship. Any last words of advice for the 18 Strong audience?
I would say that this game is very hard. It's the only sport where the ball just sits there. So the less movement of your body, if you turn your shoulders, your hips will turn. If you put the club to the top and let it fall back down in position, try to trace what you did on the way back, on the way through. Everybody tries to drive the legs. Everybody tries to do all this stuff. But if you just simply have a decent grip and swing the arms correctly, everything falls in place. Your body kind of syncs up and goes together. So it's hard. Don't get too frustrated. If you got a chance, 5 minutes to do anything, stretch, opposed to hitting balls. You'll get better.
I love it. Coach, can't thank you enough. We're rooting for the Demon Deacons this year, and hope to catch up with you later in the future.
I hope you call me back. It's been very nice, and I appreciate it very much, Jeff. You have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining me this week on the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more information on Coach Haas or the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, just go to 18strong.com/Jerry-Haas, or just look up number 153 in our episodes, and you'll find all the notes from today's shows as well as any links that we may have talked about. Also, don't forget to check out the PGA Tour mobile app to stream or keep up with the leaderboard, what's going on every weekend for the tournament. And as well, check out Super Speed Golf at superspeedgolf.com and start swinging faster and crushing that ball much farther down the fairway. All right, that's all we got this week. We will catch up with you next week with another great guest. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.